Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Indian Dream and welcome to the Business Munchies segment. As you should know by now, Business Munchies is just Siddharth and I talking about different business ideas and how we would go ahead and build those ideas. So let's jump right into it. My very first thing is an update on an idea that we spoke about last time. Okay, so we've spoken about a direct to consumer fruit company. So basically, where you sell seasonal fruits from in a direct to consumer model. I had a friend who was doing exactly that, and I asked him, "Hey, like, why did you stop doing this?" And he had a very simple answer. What he said was that so he had started selling avocados, and what he said was that I had not come up with products to sell in the off season of avocados. There were also chances of low quality produce, and the last mile delivery was not as established as it is today. So he was doing this about 3 or 4 years ago, and yeah, of course, since then there have been a lot of people who are doing fresh produce, last mile delivery. And I guess, yeah, if somebody can solve those issues, I can totally see this kind of company working out. And since last time, I also one more thing I realized was the consumer base that you build for one high-end fruit will obviously be the same consumer base that for the next one, and you just have to build out an email list, a phone number list, a WhatsApp broadcast list, or whatever, and you just broadcast like, hey, I'm done with avocados. Now I'm moving on to passion fruits or dragon fruits or whatever else.
Yeah, I think you need to add a big layer of branding around it, right? Like a lot of these high end customers enjoy the fact that this is branded and I'm buying it from a reputed organization, right? So build branding around it and sort of try and go as wide as possible so that this is like some sort of a social status signal, which is basically all brands, I guess. But yeah, I don't think this should be targeted as a mass market product.
Yeah. And so one more update I want to give everyone. So in our last episode, which was the union budget episode, we spoke about how the Indian government is starting to focus on seaweed farming and seaweed processing in Tamil Nadu. So of course I had to take a deep dive into that because I was so curious about this. It just came out of nowhere, in my opinion. I did a deep dive into this. I found out who the largest farmers and processors are for this in Tamil Nadu. It's a company called AquaAgri. But I spoke to them this morning, and hopefully we should be getting them on the podcast soon. So yeah, if the whole seaweed thing interested you, like it interested me, just watch out for a seaweed farming processing episode in the coming weeks. It should be fun. Okay, so that let's move on to our
Actually,
ideas for this week.
before we do that, Sahil, seed I would think is sort of high end farming, right? And way back, I spoke about mushroom farming. In fact, this week I spoke to the guy who's like the number three producer of mushrooms in India, and he got into this business after evaluating. He specifically wanted to evaluate high tech farming and what are the segments that you can get into, and he said he evaluated a bunch of things. Eventually, got into mushroom farming. I'm going to try and get him on the podcast as well. So we should do a trends on high end farming and the economics behind this.
Okay, cool. That's going to be super interesting. Seaweed farming and mushroom farming. The crazy thing is, these guys, the seaweed farmer that I spoke to, he used to work at PepsiCo for 14 years before he got into mushroom farming. I'm sorry, into seaweed farming. And the mushroom farming guy that you spoke to, Siddharth, he's from ISB,
He's
right?
from ISP, and then he was in the healthcare consulting, pharma consulting, social impact consulting before he went into this.
Yeah, so it's not. Yeah, I guess it's not for people, in the rural areas. Like I think these high tech farming activities are really opening up to not just opening up. I think a lot of urban people are moving further out, and they're doing all these kind of different new age farming techniques.
Yeah, 100%.
Even even my friend who was doing the seasonal fruit thing a couple of years ago, even he is now doing natural farming. He does natural farming consulting. He built a rose farm out in the middle of Maharashtra. So yeah, a lot of people from the cities are moving out and doing all kinds of farming these
Please
days.
tell me he's doing hydroponics rose farm.
Yeah, so his rose farm is hydroponic. Then he recently, I think about a year ago, he started not liking hydroponic as much because he said that it uses too many chemicals. So now his rose farm is still hydroponic, but now he's trying to build a bunch of natural farms for other people. So he like does consulting for that.
Very interesting. Yeah, one of these days we should talk about hydroponic farming too. And there's a company called Landcraft Agro that I really want to speak to. So we'll get them on the podcast too. I think we've just conjured up the trends on high tech farming, and we're going to follow it up in the next few weeks to see if we can pull it off.
Awesome. So, Siddharth, you had something you wanted to start with today.
One of my friends actually messaged after listening to some of our Munchies episodes and said that you should look at all the industries that are analog, that are not digitized yet, and how digital disruption could happen to them. And that, I think that's a fantastic way to spot some of these business opportunities, because as they say, software is going to eat the world, right? So most of these analog industries are going to move towards digital disruption. One of the industries that I've previously worked and I've seen very closely is the business loans industry. So I was working with an SME lending company, and as part of that, I came across this entire model of DSAs. Now, DSAs are direct selling agents. In the business loans industry, there's obviously the mortgage, you get loans on your property or your home and stuff like that. There are also direct selling agents for that. That's a much larger market, but smaller commissions, because the rate of interest is fairly low on it. The commission would range, somewhere between 1%, 1.5% of the loan amount, which is still big because the loan amount is big. But I'm specifically speaking about the unsecured business loans industry. To give you a size of the industry, every month Delhi NCR disperses about 600 to 800 crores worth of unsecured business loans, right? And the interest on this could range anywhere from 13 to 14%, which is what banks charge, up to 23, 24%, which is NBFCs that take a lot of risk end up charging, right? So a broad spectrum. But the commissions on these, by the way, are anywhere from 2 to 3%. So 2% from the banks, 3% from the NBFC, somewhere sometimes even more than 3%, 3.5% from the NBFCs.
So, if I'm a business taking a 10 crore loan, that means that this agent is getting like 20 lakhs, 30
Yeah,
lakhs.
yeah. uh,
Wow.
yeah. So these ticket size 10 crores unsecured generally doesn't happen. This will probably be secured backed by property, so it'll be somewhere 1% commission or something. But across, like, let's say if you're taking a crore, 2 crores, this could easily be arranged in unsecured business loans, and 3% of that is going to go into the commission, into the direct selling agent's commission. This entire industry, by the way, runs on paper, like hard paper. The financials, the balance sheet, all of this needs to be in paper. There are very few NBFCs, forget banks, NBFCs who do this in a digitized fashion. And what they do is take papers from these direct selling agents and convert them into their own software, which basically is inputting all the balance sheet information, banking information, and the system is designed in a way where all the calculations, all the ratios that a credit man is the guy who's going to look at the loan and say that this should be approved or not approved. All the calculations that were done manually previously are going to be automated, right? So they're going to look at banking cash flows, they're going to look at the financial ratios, the inventory days, the average working capital days, accounts payable, accounts receivable, bunch of different metrics, right? All of this is digitized. Now I was thinking of, and to give you a scale, on how the supply chain of this really works, there are large agencies, or whatever you call it, loan agents called Andromeda, SBJ, and a bunch of different ones across India. And they have a franchisee sort of model for different cities. So they will have a franchisee in one city where all the loans originated from the city. The franchisee owner gets 2%, the main agency gets 1%. The main agency's role is to build relationships with the headquarters of these banks and NBFCs, right? And these city franchisees then work with sub DSAs. These are, think of them as freelancers, right? And they will get the file, they will own the relationship with the customer, and they will get somewhere between zero point 0.5 to 1%, and there are a bunch of different targets and stuff like that. To give you a understanding of how big this market is, every quarter a Bajaj or a Kotak or Tata is going to take these sub DSAs to Turkey, to Paris, sometimes to the USA, right? They do so many contests to take these freelancers to different countries to just have fun, because that's the kind of revenues they end up generating from with their help. From a revenue perspective for these DSAs, 600 crores just in Delhi, so 3% of that is 18 crores. 18 crores of revenue for these DSAs every single month just from Delhi. Now add Bombay, Bangalore, Chennai, Ahmedabad, Indore, Jaipur, all these places have significant amount of revenue that's generated just as commissions. I don't know the exact number, very hard to get the exact number, but I know for a fact 600 to 800 crores in Delhi is a number.
I mean, easily it must be 1,000 crore business, the DSA business, because I mean, if you're saying Delhi is 18 crores per month, Bombay must be much higher,
Yeah,
because obviously there's so many more businesses
yeah.
here. This must easily be 1,000 crore business. Yeah.
Is I would, yeah, I mean probably slightly more also, right? But there is room for you to do what a Paisa Bazaar or a Policy Bazaar has done for customers, but do it for businesses, right? Where you say that you're going to have a tech product of sorts, and initially a big team, which is going to be digitizing all the papers that you get, but then you build relationships with the banks where you give this information directly in a digital form. All the banks are moving to digital systems where all this analysis is now being done digitally, right? So you build APIs over the next few years. You also can apply basic business rules to figure out different businesses will fit, with different banks in terms of the credit policies. All banks have different credit policies. Now that you can automate that entire process, the system could tell you, hey, send this file to NBFC 1 like a Bajaj, a Tata, and send this to banks like HDFC and Kotak because this fits into their credit policy. You can automate this entire process. You can have relationships with the banks, and you can directly do sub DSA model. You don't need city-wide franchisee owners. So there's efficiency that you could derive out of that, and you're not limited by location because the tech platform can be across the country. And this gives sort of those freelancers more freedom, right? They're not under three layers. They're not three layers away from the bank. They are one layer away from the bank, so higher margins for them potentially and stuff like that. I haven't thought through this idea. I gave this idea to one of my ex colleagues who said who's going to work on it. I'm going to follow up with them. If anybody is working in this space, I know decently well and have decent connections to help you out both in terms of brainstorming and connecting you to the right people. I would love to help out.
Yeah, I think this is quite an interesting idea. So, a couple of things that come to mind immediately. Number one is that the existing DSAs, you call them DSAs, right? They have such strong relationships with the banks. What I have found working in India is that it's very difficult to break into markets that are very relationship based. I see the same thing in my industry where your relationship with a utility matters a lot. That's my first. That's my instinctual
Can
reaction.
I can I take can I respond to that? The relationships with the customer are the absolute most important. It's very hard for the customer to break away from a DSA that they're working with, and say that I'm going to trust somebody else, right? So I see that as an issue, but what you're doing is breaking the sub DSA and DSA relationship, or the franchisee DSA relationship, which are already very weak because these sub DSAs tend to work with multiple different franchisee DSAs or city level DSAs, right? So you don't go out and build a relationship with a customer because then you will need foot on the ground and higher expense and all of that. But you just try to give a better experience, a faster turnaround time, a better way to sort of release commissions. A lot of these times these freelance DSAs have to wait months before they see any sort of commissions because they don't have any power, right? So move the power in their hands. Let them be the direct relationship, let them have the direct relationship with the consumer, and just make the life of that sub DSA much easier.
Okay, I understood about half of that. But the second point I was going to make is that once a large DSA sees that you're moving in on their territory, they will immediately start, building out the tech piece themselves. What I would probably do is I would build out this product for a really small niche at first, like doing business loans for seaweed manufacturers, for example. Just a random niche that just came to my mind, but something that is small enough that the bigger DSA will not notice. And once you're able to build out in that niche, then you can start expanding to other places. But taking the DSA head on might make them a bit too aware of what you're doing.
I mean, the other way to think about this is you can play a low value game, but just developing the software and handing it to the DSAs as a software as a service product. The upside is lesser, but you have a short customer base that's not going to go anywhere. If you can, because I've seen these DSAs have a team of like 30, 40, 50 different people who are just basically using this paper and converting it to online or work, making the relationships with the different banks work and stuff like that, right? So there's efficiency to be had there using just a software as a service product.
Okay. You know what this kind of reminds me of? It was reminding me of a tweet I read recently by a guy I follow on Twitter. His name is Girdley in the US. And his tweet basically said was that real estate agents have to be, on average, the laziest group of professionals. I guess that's why the few that are highly competent hustlers clean up. So I guess what he's basically saying is that on average, real estate agents are very lazy, but a couple of them who are really like gung ho about it do really well. And I was thinking about my experience in India because I've been recently thinking about buying a house. I've engaged with about 4 or 5 different real estate agents, and I've seen probably like dozens of apartments. And I've noticed that one or two of them are, oh my god, they're so efficient. They were extremely friendly. The first time I met him or met them, they understood exactly what my and my wife's taste was and only took us to those kind of places. The other real estate agents, they would just give me random crap. They would constantly give me apartments that were way above my budget, like 50% above my budget. And then they would be like, oh, why are you not buying this flat? Oh, it's a little expensive, but you're not going to get everything that you want. And I think, even in India, we have the same problem. And I was just thinking about the same kind of thing that you were saying about DSAs, whether you can do the same thing in India about real estate agents.
Yeah, not to this particularly, but this brings me back to one of the conversations that I was having with a friend of mine. I was in his apartment, and overlooking that is a house which which is fairly old, and an old sort of uncle and auntie live there, and they are thinking of moving out and moving into an apartment, and they're trying to sell that property. Now this is a fairly developed part of Indore where I don't think it's going to be too difficult to get a decent rate on that property. To put some numbers behind this, they're thinking of selling that property for, let's say, 8 to 10 crores. Right now, it's a plot of land and just an independent house. You could technically, a small time real estate investor could technically raise some funds and sort of rebuild the entire thing into different apartments. You could probably do 10 apartments, and each apartment could go anywhere from 1.5 to 2 crores, right? This could be a 3 4 4 5 floor building, right? And that got me thinking, why is there no real estate syndication in India? So like in the US, there are a bunch of these independent real estate investors who or syndicators are they called, who work with different investors who have free cash flows, and one part of their allocation is real estate. They raise money from them and buy a multi-family apartment, put that out on lease and generate cash flows, or either flip it in 2 3 years and then return the money to the real estate investors after taking a certain cut in the profit. Why does something like this doesn't exist in India? Because that opportunity is short money. Take it for 8 to 10 crores, and you could probably make 15 to 20 crores in a couple of years by doing the development and all of that. Why does something like that doesn't exist in India? My first thought is trust deficit. I think as a society we have low trust, and you would do this only if you know everybody who's part of the deal and who's leading the deal. So it's very hard to build a network of people who don't know you per se, who are going to sort of back you with the money. I think this is already happening with angel list syndicates, where a lot of these syndicates are raising money from different working professionals, small ticket sizes. But I wonder if this could be applied at a much larger ticket size with real estate syndication.
So my first thing to note is that I'm shocked that anything is selling at 8 to 10 crores in indoor. Okay. Uh, that said, so while you were talking, I was just googling about real estate syndication in the US, and I have I'm subscribed to a bunch of US newsletters, and I've been seeing a lot of ads lately about, right, like you said, real estate syndication in the US. There are a lot of them happening right now. This market has matured to such a point that there's even a real estate syndication software, Syndication Pro, and we've actually hosted the founder of Syndication Pro on our podcast, Amit. So it's a pretty mature market, and I think there's a lot going on in this market. What you said about Indians and trust, as soon as you said why does it not work in India, my mind immediately went to the same thing, to trust. But my question is, what's the difference between real estate syndication and just doing an REIT, which is where you invest in a larger fund, and they invest in large commercial real estate? Why not just do that instead?
I would think the opportunities for higher returns exist in smaller properties. The REITs will give you a consistent CAGR of, let's say, 14-15% if managed well. These kind of deals could give you a significantly higher CAGR, is my initial thought. I don't know enough to say that if I'm right or wrong.
I can definitely see this as a pretty big industry. And actually, the pandemic would have been a perfect time for stuff like this to be happening. And I guess that's why it was happening in the US. That's why there's so many of them came up during the pandemic, because the house prices were low, and you're just buying up a bunch of properties by crowdfunding money.
And on the point of, you were surprised on seeing 8 to 10 crores in Indore, I guess people from Bombay wouldn't know what it is to sell a plot of land. Do you guys have any plot of land that's available? I I doubt.
Yeah, I mean, the plots of land in Bombay will be selling for like 60 crores and shit. So it's much more expensive.
Let's
Okay.
let's move on to the next one.
So before we move on to the next one, you completely took over the whole real estate discussion. I still think in real estate in India, it's still such a messed up market where you have to go to the real estate agent, and you only get deal flow through the real estate agent. There are websites like what's it called, house.com, or what's it called?
Housing.com.
There's so
Housing.com.
housing.com, housing. There are a lot of websites like that, but the only thing those websites give you is it'll show you that in this area there is this house in this building, um, sorry, this apartment in this building, but it won't really facilitate that trade. um, I would never make a house purchase from that. I would maybe do a rental thing from that, but I would never make a house purchase from that. And additionally, in the US, you have websites like Redfin. I don't know if you know Redfin, Siddharth, where you can actually see the current value of a house. Again, in India, I don't think we have that. I don't know. I still feel like the real estate market still has a lot of ways it can get completely. I don't
Dude,
know.
the
What do you
thing
think?
about the real estate prices in India, and why, especially when it comes to selling, is I don't know if a lot of people are comfortable putting the actual house price online, because so much of it, like decent percentage of it, happens off books, right? That's what I've grew. That's what I've seen over the years, where 50% of the entire amount is off books, cash transactions, and stuff like that. That's definitely reduced in the last few years and will probably continue reducing in the next few. So can expect much more innovation happening in buying and selling houses for sure.
And also, sorry, also real estate agents, since I've been meeting so many of them lately, I've seen them, they do all their work through WhatsApp. I don't see any customer relationship management on their end. And I definitely, I don't, there must be real estate CRM softwares, but they are clearly not using it. So there is also a market over there. I don't know how they're managing their customer
A
relationships.
mobile first customer relationship management software for real estate is definitely an idea to work on. I don't know if India is the right consumer base or the right, customer base, but definitely across the globe, you could develop a SaaS in India and sell it across the globe.
I'll be shocked if it doesn't exist, man. It's such a basic requirement, but I guess they just don't use it. I've noticed salespeople hate using CRM softwares. Okay, so we should probably move on to the next
Yeah.
thing now. Enough about real
Yeah.
estate. What's the next thing that I have on my list? Yeah, branding. So I was just reading this thing recently about how branding has become the most important skill, branding and marketing in these days. Because earlier there were not that many businesses that were competing with you, especially on the internet, because it was so difficult to build a business. While now with stuff like Shopify, which with AWS, with no code, it's so bloody easy to build a website. It's so bloody easy to build an e-commerce website. I can literally build an e-commerce website in a day. I built our Indian Dream website in a day. It's not that hard. But the thing is, how do you get the word out there? Even a podcast, it's so easy to make a podcast. We did it in a couple of days as well. But what we are finding hard still, and what I found hard with all the websites I've built, is how do you get the word out there? It's really bloody difficult. And that's why in the last 10 years, you've seen this whole big surge of digital marketing agencies all across India. I know so many people who have their own digital marketing agencies. We hosted Himanshu Arora from Social Panga, and they grew that digital marketing agency so fast. I've seen, I mean, it's insane how fast Social Panga has grown. But what I've realized is that even using these digital marketing agencies, a lot of them are not very good. And it's still very difficult to get your name out there in India, across the world, across the internet. And there's still a lot of space to build a lot of different businesses around branding. Yeah, what do you think?
100%, man. I like how you described it's so easy to start that you now need to differentiate using branding. I could resonate with that immediately, and as you said, we are struggling with that also. We don't do a good enough job of distributing the kind of content that we're creating and creating a brand for the Indian dream. On that note, I'm just going to plug, we're looking for an intern to help us with that. The entire February, Sahil and I have said we're going to do this ourselves, build standard operating procedures, and then hopefully get an intern to use that as the foundation and take us to the next level. So if you're interested, do come join. Sorry for the weird plug, but anything around brand consultancy, anything around branding in general, for sure works. But again, I think it's a highly competitive market, man. It's very difficult to stand out with the kind of work that you do, and focusing on niches here might not be a bad idea, right? Like a brand consultancy for consumer brands, a brand consultancy for a different niche altogether, stuff like that.
I'm gonna say, okay, what are the different businesses that you can start around branding? There are a lot of businesses that are already doing this, but I still think there is space for this, and I still think that it's difficult to find good agencies that are doing these things. The first thing that comes to my mind is a boutique branding or a boutique logo agency. Whenever, or a boutique, like just a design agency. Whenever I try to look for somebody for help with my design, they're always doing a bunch of different things and they always suck. It's very difficult to find a good design agency in India.
Specifically for packaging, think about all the D2C brands and how important it is for them to get packaging right. There could be a niche focused on packaging, right, from the tubes that the products go in, or whatever things that the products go in. I think there could be a packaging design agency that could be a niche.
Yeah, again, my wife does packaging. Then, secondly, what Social Panga does, a performance based full stack digital marketing agency as well. Because one thing I've realized is that finding an agency who does the entire thing, from doing good design all the way to doing good performance marketing, is extremely difficult. Again, this is something that I've looked for, and the agencies I've worked with have really been terrible. It's a difficult niche.
It is a difficult niche.
Okay. Thirdly, distinct photography. One of my startup friends, he's building a brand. He doesn't have too much money because he's bootstrapped at the moment, and but he still sent his food products all the way to bloody Israel because this guy does amazing food photography. My friend doesn't have a lot of money, but he had to make sure that he has good photography, to the point where there was nobody in India that he could trust enough to do it. So he sent it all the way to Israel.
I have a product that Nitika, my wife, spoke about a few months back, where she said that because Shopify and all of these have become so easy to set up, one of the things that's not been solved for is the product photography. And she said that why can't you develop a technology where you click a picture of a product in on a dummy or in a specific sort of place with green background. The software automatically identifies those products and then places them in interesting backgrounds, right? This entire process could be automated, or at least made like a Canva sort of a thing, where it's cut out the pictures of the pants, shoes, whatever, and then you place it in interesting backgrounds that you can select from a list of different backgrounds and make it look extremely fancy. Because the way it's done today on models and stuff like that is obviously not doable using this tech. But a lot of Instagram fashion based Instagrams are now placing products in different sort of backgrounds and trying to sell those, right? And I think there's an opportunity to build a software like that.
That's super interesting. Wow. That's definitely something that I think I would use. I think a lot of people would use, in fact. One thing I've realized while watching Manmai, my wife, work is that she'll have a photo that her client will send her. And I usually use the photo as it is. I'm like, okay, this is the photo. But no, she like photoshops it and it looks realistic, but it looks amazing after she photoshops it.
Yeah,
So like you said, like if somebody can figure out how to automate it, that would be really, really, really
yeah.
useful. So one more thing about like branding is how do you build a large, really engaged community? And this is not just about like community consulting, like I've spoken about before, which a lot of edtech platforms are doing these days. But like, how do you also build that community? And one interesting thing that I read about, said by the founder of Basecamp, is that in order to build a large community, you have to really pick a fight, because only when you pick a fight do you really get noticed. And Siddharth, this is something that we never do. We never pick fights. We never like, you know what, this guy sucks. We should start picking more fights. But what they were saying was that like when you pick a fight, that's when there's like a story emerges, and that's when people really become aware of your product. So like these Basecamp people, they were launching a new product called Hey. It was some kind of like email product, and they picked a fight with Apple about the fees that Apple was charging for that product.
Yeah,
And because of that, Hey became huge even before it was launched on the App Store. I mean, shit like this, like I don't know about this stuff, and that's why our community is not that big. But maybe we'll start getting more controversial now, and we'll become huge.
I like the idea of helping brands build communities. We were speaking to Navjot, who's the vice president at Fireside Ventures, and she mentioned that a lot of people are hiring community managers, but because this role is so new, nobody really knows what kind of skill sets you're looking for. Now think of these digital marketing agencies, right? Or branding agencies who say that, hey, we have a special product line where we'll help you build an engaged community. And because they're going to do it for like 10 different brands, they'll have way more like interesting learnings on how to really do it. I think there is an interesting service that you could build around building communities. If I don't I think somebody from the trends community was trying to take a stab at this. Yeah, I'm gonna try and check with her on what she's up to.
So yeah, one thing Navjot also said, I was recently listening to it again, is that it is a very new job, and people don't know what skills they're looking out for. But also that depending on the type of D2C company that it is, or depending on the type of company it is, the entire community engagement is very different. So like community engagement for Beardo would be completely different from community engagement for Sugar, right? Sugar is a cosmetics company aimed at women, and Beardo is obviously for men who have beards.
100%.
Yeah, exactly. So somebody like you said, an agency that has wide experience would definitely be able to do it much better than individuals. Maybe, maybe not.
All right, let's move on to one last one, I guess.
Let's do a small
Yeah.
one.
Actually, I'm just going to talk about one of the tweets that I saw from Siddharth Ram, who works at Axel. Very recently, there was a company called Zetwork that got $100 million+ funding round. And what Zetworks does is helps a lot of these large contractors do custom manufacturing. through small vendors, and they manage the entire sort of middle layer supply chain design, all of that. I don't know the details, exactly what they do, but a Zetwork for jewelry, I really like that idea, right? Help jewelry designers get their designs into wearable jewelry. A lot of these jewelry designers today work for these big jewelry brands, and they have to sort of keep designing different products. Some of them are picked up, but they're getting a fixed rate. There's no upside per se, right? But if you apply this whole concept of the gig economy and the creator economy on jewelry designers, you can say that, hey, I will manufacture the jewelry for you, and you can tell me how much to manufacture, and maybe I will have a platform that can advertise your jewelry also. But your jewelry design, I manufacture it, we share the profit, something along those lines, right? The company manages the back end, the manufacturing, all of that, and this designer can use her network to sell the jewelry and get people to the platform. I thought that could be really interesting.
I mean, yeah, jewelry manufacturing is a very artisanal, I guess is the word, task.
Yeah,
There are a lot of these 3D printers and a lot of these metal workshops that have been opening lately to do like small scale production.
yeah,
Yeah, I guess if you do like this kind of artisanal jewelry design, it's going to be expensive, obviously. But jewelry is also the kind of product where the margins are very high.
exactly, exactly.
It's interesting. I just don't know what kind of skills you would need in order to make sure that your boutique jewelry design shop. I don't even know what to call it. What kind of tools, what kind of skills you would need in house in order to make sure that you're able to service all the needs of the people coming in.
Yeah, that's for the jewelry manufacturer who's going to pick up this idea to figure out, because we are definitely not the experts.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Should we close it out?
Yeah, I think I had a couple of others, but those are bigger ideas. So let's do it the next episode.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right, one last request. If you like the content that we're producing, please leave us a review on whatever platform you're on. Subscribe to us, follow us, whatever. Do something to sort of tell us that you like the content. Email us, put it on social media, do whatever. We could use some of that motivation for sure. And very soon we're going to be launching on YouTube. So if you are someone who has skills in helping us figure out how to go on YouTube and what are the right things, we would love to have a conversation. So yeah, hit us up. Email in the show notes.
This is news for me that we're going on YouTube, but yeah, thanks for letting
I
me know, Siddharth.
I've ordered the green screen. We cannot go back from it now.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, see you guys on YouTube then.